that when we unite, we have the power. This isn't a political war. This isn't a race war. This is a war between freedom and slavery. It really is. This is a war between good and evil and truth and lies. In 2016, I woke up to a very hard reality that we were not behaving like the greatest nation in the world, and this disturbed me greatly. My great awakening wasn't in 2020 on house arrest. It was in 2016 when Dwight and Steve Hammond were going to be hauled off to prison because they were being targeted by a federal agency who wanted their land. This land battle is not anything new. What we're witnessing right now with our rights is not new. I woke up to the murder of Lavoy Finicum, the Dakota Access Pipeline protest, the murder of Alton Sterling and Philandro Castile. My heart broke over and over in 2016 as I stopped watching the mainstream news and I started going to YouTube and other sources to get my information. I watched neighbor turn against neighbor, police turn against civilians, and I saw firsthand just how corrupt and wicked our courts have become. Prior to 2016, I had never attended a court hearing. I had never visited a jail. I had never led a rally, let alone a protest. I was a Sunday school teacher and a mother, and that was as far as I ventured out of my box. After watching Lavoy Finicum's murder, he was shot in the back, and the arrest of the other occupiers at the wildlife refuge, I felt a call to go to Portland and be a voice for prisoners. The first thing I did was Google, can I have a candlelight vigil in front of a jail in Portland? Because that's how little I knew about my rights. I had no idea what I was in for. I stood on the streets of Portland, Oregon, day after day, week after week, fighting for people I didn't even know. I was exposing the enemy of the people, and that enemy was tyranny. I realized we were no longer governed, we were being ruled. At this point, I befriended everybody, police, liberals, patriots, anybody who would come down and support us and fight for justice. I was down there to support and help prisoners. I have a natural love for all kinds of people. Factions do not matter to me. I cannot be bought. I will not be forced into a cage. I cannot be controlled, and I am nobody's subject. What I learned was not what I hoped for, and that was that a gavel or a uniform does not make you ethical or just, and oftentimes it doesn't even make you right. Coming from a family of law enforcement, this was very disturbing to me. Over the next few weeks, I found, as nice as the judges were and as polite as the police and the guards were to me, they were truly not on my side. I do believe most of it was a lack of education, and that is our responsibility as the people, to educate our government when they have gone astray. That is our job. So if we don't know what our job is, how can they know what their responsibilities to us are? Over the next few weeks, sorry, I already read that. Where was the nation I grew up believing in? Is this the country I pledge my allegiance to? Is blind obedience enough to maintain freedom for my children? Surely I had to do something, and for my first time ever, I went live on Facebook, and I posted a public video, which was terrifying to me to do. I said, but people are going to read it. They're going to watch it and criticize me. I can't do this. I was going against the grain of my church circle and put most of my friends and family in shock when they saw me on the news leading protests in Portland for the first time. I believe Jesus called me to a very broad love, and over the next few years, he was about to show me just how much I didn't previously understand about how broad that love would go, and it would go far outside the walls of my church. I began reporting on the court hearings and exposing the crimes that were being swept under the rug. People were being railroaded, thrown into solitary confinement, left in cells with fecal matter all over the walls just before the prosecuting attorneys would come in and offer yet another plea deal, trying to get them to fold. It was absolutely wicked and horrific to learn just how unjust our justice system has become. I formed an online group that made sure prisoners had commissary on their books at all times. We would post all of the events, court hearings for families. 2016, we had more people sleeping under our kitchen table and in every one of our beds than we've ever had in our life. Most of the prisoners from the wildlife refuge were out of state, so in order for their families to come see them, they had to get hotels, and it was very expensive. Something Ammon Bundy always taught me and the world is sunlight truly is the best disinfectant, and I watched that. I watched God show up in a mighty way in Portland, Oregon. He not only protected us, 4+ years now I've never been cited. I was trespassed once from CPS, but they didn't give me official citation. Never been arrested, never burned any buildings down, but I've watched God work. At the end of 9 months, I watched 7 people that I had grown to love and respect, and their families who spent more time in my house than any other extended family ever has. I watched them walk out of jail as free men and women when they won an acquittal against the federal government that has a 98.9% conviction rate. These were individuals that for 9 months refused to take the plea deal and walk out, and continued saying, I want my day in court, I want my speedy trial, I won't waive that right. And it took them 9 months of sitting behind bars to get their day at trial. Over the past 4 years, I have fought for innocent people across this nation via the internet and in person in 5 different states, protesting against the EPA, the Bureau of Land Management, the FBI, any corrupt police and sheriff departments, and even CPS, which that was this last year, and that was a really scary one for me because I really didn't want to touch CPS. There is no jury in CPS in family court. There's only corruption and wickedness. Right. That's right. I promise you all this, when you show up, God will fight the battle for you. When you show up on truth and with principle, and you set all of your fear aside and you do what you're called to do, God will show up for you. It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority, keen setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. That's Samuel Adams. If I can do the things that I've done, I know the people out here can move mountains, and that's what I'm going to move in quickly now and talk about what I've been doing here in Clark County. At one point in Nevada in 2017, I learned of a political prisoner who was left overnight in a shower cell, handcuffed, urinated all over himself multiple times, and I received that phone call when my husband and I were barbecuing. So I'm here to tell you that standing up for your neighbor is never convenient. It's never cheap. Have a credit card handy. We maxed a few of ours over the years doing work for prisoners. But when that prisoner called me, he said, they're going to kill me. And I said, I'll be there tomorrow. And I got on a plane that was ridiculously expensive, and I showed up in Nevada with nothing. And I looked at the guards and said, I'm not leaving until he's out of solitary confinement. And over the next 30 days of protesting at that prison in a God-forsaken desert, when most days were 110 degrees, I watched God show up and light up that whole prison with hope and put that prison for profit on notice that we the people were watching. And we understood how they were using their judicial powers within the courts to silence the American people. Jails are not full of convicted criminals. I promise you that. Down there in Nevada, somebody showed up and handed me their, what did they give me, honey? Their Lincoln Navigator for the month. Said, you need something to sleep in if you're going to protest out of jail. A week later, the commissioners showed up, brought us porta potties and a dumpster because we had so many people camping across the street from that prison. We did our first jail march around that prison, which they had never had happen before. They had snipers on the roof. Our kids were there bike riding in the streets. This is in the middle of nowhere. And the snipers were pointed at us. We're there to expose the corruption and fight for freedom and justice and liberty for all. And they have guns pointed at children. At the end of that, the prisoners were released from solitary confinement and we did come home. And it wasn't many months later when they all received a full dismissal of their charges with prejudice. And they were all released and sent home after 2 years. So most of my activism has been outside of my own state, and I've appreciated that greatly. Until the stay-home order happened, and it was a few weeks and I just couldn't sleep, and I was sick to my stomach, and I called a few friends. I called Joey Gibson. Joey, host a church service. Joey, host a rally. Joey. Then God said to me one day, Kelly, I'm calling you. It hasn't happened yet because I've called you to do it. So I came here to the Capitol and I stood with the people a month or so ago, and that was a beautiful rally, but everybody just went home at the end. And I drove back into my town and I thought I have to do more, but what am I going to do? So I started People's Rights of Washington. And I called a friend, Ryan, and he got me a Grange Hall for us to meet in. And I said, if 20 people show up so we can talk about our rights and educate, it's going to be a good meeting. We had over 100 people there and they were out the door. We didn't even have enough room for everybody. To our pleasant surprise, we were not harassed by the police, although they did circle the building. It is incredibly intimidating to stand on your own. Out here is easy, but when you go into your own town and you piss off your own county sheriffs and your own CPS agents and your own health department, it's scary. It's terrifying, to be honest. This is war we're in right now. And there is no room for fear in war. We have to be courageous when we go home. People's Rights of Washington was started because Emperor Inslee violated his oath to the Constitution. He is a tyrant. He's far outside of the bounds of the Constitution. Thank you, Governor Inslee, for motivating me to take back my own county. So up in Idaho, they started a phone system I was going to duplicate, and we decided just to join it. And it's a phone alert system, much like the officials get to use when there's a problem and they get to send out that help is needed. And it's the number is 80123. You text the word rights to that number. You put what area you're in, whichever area you want to be notified. You could put you're from California for all we care and that your name is Bob. It doesn't matter. You're going to get notifications from that area that you mark that you want information on. For 4 years, I basically used a system like this, and it was called Facebook. And when I went somewhere, I did a post and said, I'm going to Nevada, guys. Okay, we're in Utah now. Everybody get to Oregon. And people would show up. And we don't tell people what to do. We say, come, however you know to support your neighbor. Some have histories with CPS. Some are lawyers. Some are babysitters. Some just come and mow the lawn of the person we were there to help. Each person, some come with self-defense to keep us safe. Each person comes based on what they're gifted with. We're not telling people what to do here. So with this phone system, it grew leaps and bounds. It was about 300 numbers an hour were coming in a couple weeks ago. So it's up to over 27,000 numbers now. How many of you guys out here have received any of my texts in the last couple weeks? So if you're in Washington, I'm the one who sends those out. And we have area assistants that are helping. And basically, this weekend we'll be texting out the numbers to your area assistant. And that is like your 911. Not literally if you can't breathe, still call 911. But if there's an emergency, if a contact tracer shows up at your door, if CPS shows up at your door, if the health department comes to your work and threatens to shut you down, you call your area assistant. They get on 80123 just like I did last night with the Portland riots, and I sent a text out to our area to 2,700 people and said, be careful, there's a lot going on in Portland right now. But if you have an emergency, we can send a text out that says, get to this address right now. Or it might say, they've already taken the child, we need legal help. Are there any attorneys out there? Or it might say we need media coverage. Pick up your phone and do a video about this. It's a network for us to connect because Facebook is constantly taking our videos down, removing our posts for violating community standards. So what we've done is this is being moved over right now to a private server so that even the government cannot take it down. Praise God for that. Very, very good thing. So we started 4 weeks ago starting these meetings in Clark County, and it is scary, but we have about 100 to 150 people a week that are meeting now, and we're teaching the Constitution and the rights. And I do a really basic example, and I say, if I go down there and I take this man's phone, he knows it's his. He doesn't have to ask me who wrote the law that it says it's his. He knows it's his. He's going to do what he has to do to get it back. But if I tell him the government wrote a law and legislated that that's not your phone anymore, he probably wouldn't be very confused because he knows it's his phone. But if he didn't know it's his phone, he would say, okay, the government wrote a law and it's not my phone anymore. So what we're doing in our meetings is we're simply teaching what the founders laid as a foundation for this country, so that people will know what their rights are and they won't have to call and say, is a RCW law, it says they get to take my third born because we're China now. We're confused about our rights, and that's why we're literally, I see in all of our groups every day, well, you know, it did pass, there's nothing we can do, it's an RCW. He has the right. Oh, the legislators signed it. They have a right. Nobody has the rights to violate your rights. It doesn't exist. Not only because it shouldn't exist, but because it's actually written into our founding documents. So I'm going to read this quickly and then I'll wrap up. The Declaration of Independence. When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to another, and to assume among them the powers of the earth, the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitled them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with unalienable rights. Not Jay Inslee. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Yes. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. And now I'm going to tell you briefly a few things that our founders had a problem with that I have a problem with too. Our founders said that the king had made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and amount of payment of their salaries. Many of these people are in jail right now because of judges being more worried about an extra bonus or paycheck than about justice and liberty for all. He has erected a multitude of new officers. New officers. I could tell you a list a mile long of the new officers that have policing power now in this country, illegally. And sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent, sorry, I just read that again. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislators. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution, and has unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. Nothing is new under the sun, you guys. Nothing is new under the sun. For imposing taxes on us without our consent. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us. For protecting them by mock trials from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states. This happens every day in our country. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. And we are a humble people in the way that we petition for a redress of grievance. Can I get an amen? We are very humble in our approach. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is as marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people.